without a shred of foresight. I was dumbstruck. On that wintry day, the kind that seemed perfect for kicking back in that front of that wood-burning fire with a few friends, I found myself, not by a fire, but instead curled fetal position in a corner on the mattress, in a strange white van held against my will by some silent Nathaniel-like lookalikes. My father sat quietly in the passenger seat. He did not turn to look at me. A silent blonde-haired guy was driving. I made the decision to acquiesce and remain silent. I lay quietly on my side to decrease the probability that they would do whatever evil things they had in mind. I was thinking, I must be one terrible person, so out of fellowship with God that I failed to hear and see his forewarnings of this abduction. I chastised myself for being so out of touch with him. I was enormously annoyed with myself that I didn't detect this wicked thing was about to erupt. I should have known. I should have seen it coming. I should have prevented it. I kept thinking. Had I heard God's words of warning, I could have outwitted this god-awful scheme. How could I have been so blind that I did not see while visiting with them just the day before? My parents had been influenced by Satan and arranged this despicable deed. Believers of the way know the unwavering certainty that Satan will do anything to disrupt the truth and persecute way followers. Therefore, if persecution were to befall us, we knew it would be at the hands of Satan. Satan must be laughing, I thought, because he seized a perfect opportunity to have me captured. If I allowed it to happen, it was also going to have me ripped away from the truth the way had taught me. A short while after the van ride began, my religious and philosophical concerns gave way to a more physical problem. My fear worked in concert with the coffee in my kidneys and the tank-like suspension system of the van. Each bump felt like I was being dragged over a pile of boulders. I wanted to ask for a restroom stop, yet I feared that my captors might think I was plotting an escape. Regardless, I politely asked if we could stop. Their careful pre-planning was evident. They said not a word, but handed me a 12-pack styrofoam cooler in which to relieve myself. One of the guys was nicknamed Wookiee, I suppose because he looked like the Star Wars character. His long hair and beard were distinctive and scruffy. He assured me that their only intent was to talk to me about the way, and to give me some important information that way leaders had kept from me. I didn't respond. I believed that God was going to deliver me from this unthinkable situation in a matter of minutes or hours, or at the worst, in a matter of days. I distrusted this motley crew because I was sure that besides trying to rip me from the beloved truth, that these morons had conned my parents out of their hard-earned cash. Regardless, I knew that to accomplish their evil intent, they would have to put on a great show, portraying themselves in attractive ways. Over and over again I wondered, how could a person so intelligent as my father have allowed himself to be suckered in to a scheme concocted by such a low-life group? The conversation was one way, except when I was asking for the cooler. The pot of coffee and my nerves were having an effect on me that was less than pleasant. After a while, the conversation dwindled to nothing, and that was okay with me. I finally asked permission to sit up since the ride on the mattress was uncomfortable. It was apparent that the nurturing and nesting instincts didn't come naturally to these guys. At some point during the trip, they decided to put me in my parents' car. Both vehicles are pulled over to at a roadside rest, and the car and the van pulled alongside. One of the Neanderthals lookalikes, Dugan, spoke for the first time. A beret topped his stern facial tones and piercing blue eyes. His biceps were the size of my thighs, or larger, I thought. He crossed his arms, looked at me expressionless, and said, "We're going to move you into your parents' car. We can do this the easy way or the hard, and we have done it both. What's your pleasure?" I chose the easy way and reassured him that he had no worries about me doing anything stupid. Now my parents' car, Wookie was on my left and Dugan was on my right. At the moment, I felt like a toothpick being held in place by two bricks. I'm not a small man, but everything is relative, and in comparison they were much larger, stronger, and more muscular than I was. My mother was the passenger now, and Chuck was driving. I realized that all the way to the rest stop, the two vehicles had been communicating via CBs. It was a matter of factly, almost politely informed that we were heading to a safe house. We arrived in the house in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, in the afternoon. I could not wait to get into the house since I had to go to the bathroom yet again. Before they led me into the house, however, I had to sit in the vehicle for a short while. Duggan and the others made sure that all the escape routes were covered. Having done that, they led me to the room where I would spend a considerable block of time rethinking my involvement with the way. From the moment I entered the house, I began assessing the situation and making mental notes. I would be staying in a den-like room at the front of the house. A double set of wall-secured windows graced one wall. An arched opening in another wall led to a living room. The other wall had a fireplace that I noted had been unused for a long period. In one corner was a bed, and near that some overstuffed chairs. A doorway led into a hall. Straight across from that was the bathroom. I guessed that the hallway led to a kitchen. The bathroom had a well-barred window. Looking out the window, I saw the blonde-haired security man who had been driving the van staring back at me. My assessment complete, I accepted that there was no way I could escape that night. I was not daunted, however. I was confident if I couldn't unleash myself from this horrible situation, that God would do it for me. In His infinite wisdom and because of my own wavering loyalty to Him and the way, He would transport me to a better place when the timing and conditions were right for it. That was the most comforting thought I had, so I kept it in the forefront of my mind. Well, I returned to the den and braced myself for the verbal onslaught that I knew was about to erupt. One that was sure to disparage my choice in religion and attempt to shake my faith. I knew that my spiritual existence was on the line, and in greater jeopardy than even my physical safety. Without voice, I began to speak in tongues, in my mind only, to regain my emotional and spiritual balance. I knew that praying in the Spirit would keep the spiritual pipeline greased so that God could reveal to me the things I needed to do and say. I knew without a shred of doubt God could handle every situation expediently and beautifully, especially for an incredibly faithful child of His, such as me. To maintain my calm, I kept reminding myself of the people in the Bible whom God has delivered miraculously out of impossible situations. I knew I was destined to be one of them because the Bible was true and God would make a way for my escape. He would bless me in the process. Without a doubt, I knew He would transport me from the safe house to my apartment, or even better, to the Way International headquarters. That, I thought, would be a testimony to God's wonderful grace, mercy, and power. Peace came over me as I waited for His miracle of deliverance. I simply decided to wait until I was spirited away to an unknown, happily anticipated, awesome place. I was in the den alone for a while. Then Wookie came in and asked if I needed anything. I told him that I would like some cigarettes, but nothing more. They offered me food, but I declined. I had no appetite. They did provide me with cigarettes and a light. That I appreciated. Wookie then began a verbal onslaught. He told me that the Way was using mind control techniques to entice and utterly capture the hearts and minds of their followers. I gave Wookie a blank, disinterested look and shrugged my shoulders. He asked if it mattered to me that the thinking of intelligent people such as me was being controlled and manipulated by the Way leaders. I said matter-of-factly and with a good degree of confidence that if the Way was brainwashing us, then pass the soap, baby, because we had the truth more than anyone else on earth. He glanced away and shook his head in disbelief, or perhaps in disgust. In any case, he left the room. I was feeling good. Somehow I felt that I was in control. Otherwise, Wookie would not have stayed. God had provided the perfect answer to Wookie's ridiculous question. I asked myself, why would anyone focus on things of this world when they could focus on the light of God's Word? I expected Wookie to give up immediately since I had given him such a quick, valid, and unarguable point. Darkness, I reminded myself, is forced to flee when exposed to the light of the truth. I saw Wookie and the others as darkness, and knew that soon they would soon flee my presence in the light of my truth. I was wrong in that assessment. Wookie soon returned with an armful of books and papers, handed me a Bible, and asked me to look up at some scriptures with him. I felt I now had the upper hand, because I knew I had God's Word, and nothing and no one on earth is more powerful than that. In addition, I thought Wookie would be a bit stupid since he handed me a Bible. That was like handing a hostage a loaded gun. I felt sure that if things got out of hand, then Wookie or the others, that God would remove me from that situation and deliver me to a far better place of His choosing. Wookie started with scriptures about the divinity of Jesus. I could not believe he would select the scriptures that offer the least amount of proof. I expected him soon to see the error of his ways, unless, of course, he was born of the devil's seed. He reviewed various scriptures, and all the while I became bolder in my assertions. I had an explanation for each of the verses. We had studied them intently in the Way, and I was pleased that Wookie seemed inept to disprove my explanations of what they said. I grew weary after a short while and asked to stop. Wookie agreed. We cleaned the room, and I asked if there were clothes and toiletries available for my use. He said yes, and brought me into my room the suitcase I had placed into my parents' trunk. I thought myself to be quite stupid for having placed my own clothing and personal items into the trunk of my parents' car without realizing it. My ignorance irked me. I brushed my teeth and dressed for the night, making sure that I kept my wallet on me so my captors would not steal it. I needed my wallet so when God spirited me out, I would have the necessary identification.